Boys Season 2 is finally over after 8 weeks. I still disagree with the way they released the series, but it certainly doesn't reflect the quality that was put on display for everybody to see. If the first season represents revenge, the second season represents redemption. Or at least that's what they want you to think. Now, this is going to be more or less a spoiler review, in that if you aren't already a fan of The Boys, you should just watch it. It's about superheroes who are very, very human and not heroic at all. You could call it the most extreme form of realism that a superhero could ever achieve in storytelling. To such an extent that you almost wouldn't even believe that it wouldn't be any sort of fantasy and more closer to a realistic fiction. A commentary on modern politics, modern ideas, modern morality, pretty much anything you can think of when it comes to the modern day. But after the first season was all about finding truth and lies that Vought, the corporation behind the superheroes, had been hiding all along, you would think that there wouldn't be any more secrets, not any large secrets, that is, that the second season could suddenly reveal. However, that is the biggest reveal of Season 2. Regardless of what trailers you have seen and how you might have heard from your friends or whatever what this whole season is about, finding the true villain of this season is as simple as it comes. It's easy to call this person or that person or this group or that group the true evil. But The Boys Season 2 once again shows off that the true evil that the boys fight is human nature itself. The Boys Season 1 showed off how the methods that one takes to achieve one's goals, at least in real life, don't matter when you're good or evil. What matters is results. And as cruel as that sounds, if you believe otherwise, you're likely to end up dead. Season 2 delves into manipulating people through memes. This isn't a joke. They definitely were coming up with these ideas based on the 2016 election and how Trump and just people in general were using memes to promote their own ideas and put down other people. Regardless of whether you think that is right or wrong, it's definitely a great tool to belittle other people and make you appear to be in a superior position of power. There are true meme wars throughout Season 2. It's quite astonishing. And as hilarious as it is also very, very dark. After the shocking finale of Season 1, you would think that Homelander's child would end up being a very large plot point. But while it is definitely important, I would say it's just the most prevalent side plot to keep Homelander relevant. Homelander struggles to stay relevant throughout this season to the entertainment of many within the show and from the viewer's perspective as well. You'd think that you'd want to see this psychopath get his just desserts, but to some extent they reveal throughout the season that what Homelander deserves is pity, and anything less than death will most likely only lead to worse things in the future. You can make Homelander look bad. You can make Homelander understand something from a different perspective, but at the end of the day, regardless of how much he learns and changes, he is so broken, there is just no possible way that he could be fixed, especially after the finale of this season. He is truly the most doomed person in the entire show, but it's not entirely his fault, and he's far from the most despicable character that you will end up seeing throughout the show. There's plenty of times where you're just about rooting for him, but probably not completely. Now, somebody that you will be rooting for is the Deep. Yes, that's right, the Deep. Remember that guy that they were making the butt of every joke at the end of last season, and his life was just getting more and more pathetic? Well, they managed to make him look even more pathetic, but also kind of amazing at times. He's just so desperate, you just have to side with him sometimes. You just want to see him back at the top of his game, because he also is by far the nicest of all of the 7. Now, of course, we aren't talking about his ideology. As far as his ideology is concerned, he's just as corrupt as the rest of them, but he also wants to save people at the end of the day. Now, the boys this season were all running away from the law, far more than in the previous season. In fact, so much so that you'll be wondering how they aren't caught over and over again. Vought can track them so easily, and they interact with so many people that while it keeps the story entertaining, it makes you question the believability of how they can still operate as mostly normal social human beings. But even that will be addressed by the end of the season, because at the end of the day, this entire season is one big misdirection. Remember when I said that Homelander's child is the biggest side plot? Well, there's a reason for this. They make it a very big problem that must be solved. But at the end of the day, Homelander's child isn't a threat. And Homelander himself, with his child, should be more good than bad. Especially since the limited time that we saw them together, Homelander wasn't really teaching him anything really bad. He just wanted him to grow up uncorrupted the way that Homelander was. But of course you can always assume the worst of Homelander, which is a pretty good assumption. He does some truly amazing things throughout the season, but perhaps nothing quite as good as the airplane scene in season 1. But it doesn't change the fact that the kid is the emotional core of the entire season. And so when you learn who the true villains are, and who the true heroes are as well, you'll be quite surprised and perhaps a little disappointed that certain people don't get their complete just desserts. But it depends how vengeful you are toward fictional people doing fictional things. If you take everything that is done in this show 100% seriously and think of everything that everybody deserves in this show, more than likely they should all be in jail and horribly murdered or whatever have you. But as somebody in this show said, you don't always get what you deserve. Now for the super spoilery part, if we weren't being spoilery enough. I really liked how by the end of the season, most of the 7 weren't the bad guys anymore. Most of the 7 had either seen the error of their ways or learned that there were much more important things that they should be doing rather than concentrating on their success. Of course, that said, their success is the linchpin of this entire series. In the most climactic scene of the entire season, reputation was all that mattered to many of these heroes. Similarly, all that mattered to the boys were their relationships. And that's, of course, what makes them the most endearing part of this series. And the relationship stuff in this series is just very wholesome. No one truly questions why anybody likes another person for this reason or that reason. All they care about is that they want to live to be with that person in the future. And if their friends can also live with their loved ones as well, it's also only a good thing. There are many times throughout the season where people come very close to pretty much being selfish monsters, like the heroes. But eventually, everybody's priorities, they get put in check after a while. Now, all that said, Kimiko, the female member of the boys, is a very odd point of the show, because her brother was a pretty major issue up to around the halfway point, and you have to wonder, after that point, how much you should be siding with her beliefs. Because she's so filled with rage throughout the series. For good reason, to be sure, but it's hard to see when she chooses to prioritize the greater good rather than her own personal feelings. There is definitely a choice that she will make that firmly shows what her priorities are. But when it comes to why she chose it, you just have to assume that at her core she is a good person. But remember, she's a good person who seemingly was also very filled with rage only mere days ago about the death of her brother. But again, it's hard to gauge how people will feel over time. So if she gets over the death of a loved one quickly, who are we to judge, right? Now, the first half of the series I'd consider slow. You think things are going to progress pretty quickly and dynamically. Just in general, you expect good storytelling, I suppose. And I wouldn't say it ends up being bad, it's just things just get stopped. Like Homelander, he's progressing with his kid even though his mother doesn't want him there. But he's making small steps here and there. But then eventually he gets to a point where he's limited. He doesn't want to force the kid into doing anything he doesn't want to do, similar to how Homelander himself was treated as a child. But once he gets to a certain point, he pretty much gives up, which is kind of hard to believe of Homelander, but perhaps he just put it to the side as far as his priorities go. And so when Stormfront comes to the forefront, it does make sense that she is the catalyst to get the plot moving again, but she's also fairly one note. There's so many points in the story where you just believe she's going to drastically change the situation or reveal that she's been manipulating things from behind the scenes, but as much of a manipulator as she was shown to be, she also kind of just wasn't. I'm not saying she was a great person, but she was not two-faced to those that she cared about. She was very honest toward those she cared about. And while you definitely can't side with Stormfront at all, you couldn't hate her completely for carrying out what she views as Vaught's ultimate goal. Now, of course, what is Vaught's ultimate goal? Well, judging by the finale, the very last minute of Season 2, it is very hard to say. It's very hard to say who's in control, who's manipulating who. There's definitely one big suspect, but it still makes you wonder, what is the ultimate goal? Because Stormfront's ultimate goal was definitely a very different goal than Vaught's ultimate goal. Stormfront's from World War II Nazis. She wants to carry on the will of the Nazis. It's pretty obvious that Vought isn't entirely against it, but also they're led by a black man who definitely didn't see eye to eye with Stormfront's methods or goals. There's this one hilarious scene that's just so memorable, in which this black man must tell this white guy that he can't side with A-Train because he has to follow the whims of this Nazi woman. And then the white guy's like, well, wait, why can't the black guy get in? And the other black guy's just gotta say, like, I don't got a choice. It's so ridiculous. There's just so many memeable moments in the show, but, you know, it's definitely far less hilarious than Season 1, which is perfectly fine, and probably for the best, considering we were dealing with terrorism and manipulating the public with social media and redeeming people who perhaps don't deserve to be redeemed for the actions that they did. But when it comes to the biggest mystery of Season 2, I never stopped thinking about it. It was there the whole time. It was the biggest question on your mind since very close to the beginning of the season. And of course, nobody addressed it. And there's no explanation for it other than there was other priorities. But the thing we're talking about is the person with the ability to blow heads up. How do you forget about this character? I understand that there were many important things happening, but especially after episode 7, you would think that that's the most pressing issue for episode 8. But no, somehow they sidetrack it completely, with it, part of it being a Deus Ex Machina situation in which A-Train gets all the info on Stormfront suddenly, and so everybody's attention is diverted to Stormfront. But then the person who explodes heads, which was a big deal, even in episode 8, gets completely ignored. And nobody's saying, hey, we're going to look into it. Hey, we have an idea. When the most obvious way to find who had this power would be just by looking at how you have to use this power. There was only two methods imaginable. Either the person could use this ability through the television screen, which would be completely broken and pretty much impossible to find, or the person was in the room themselves. Now, this is kind of hard to believe given the first time that we see this power used, but whatever. You're just supposed to assume that she's working for Vought, right? So it makes sense. But it also means, again, that she was following the boys around and was able to blow that one girl's head up because she just happened to follow them. Again, there's the whole point of the boys should have been caught over and over again, but somebody was helping them from behind the scenes, and now we kind of know why. It's because Victoria, the leader of the opposition toward Vought, seems at least to be working for Vought, which I suppose means that Vought wanted her to be on the opposition so that she creates this anti-Vought organization or movement that then can be directed by Victoria at Vought's whim. But of course, there's going to be some point or another in which you're going to be wondering, hey, why aren't you doing this action, Victoria? We have to go after Vought, but you want to ignore this type of detail. So when that happens, what's her explanation going to be? Who knows, I guess. It's kind of impossible to find out that she has superpowers, but I guess we'll have to wait and see for season 3. But what truly matters is that A-Train's back in, baby! Oh man, I can't believe A-Train's back in. Oh man, A-Train! A-Train, he's so great! Oh, I can't believe he's back in. He was such a great guy. Oh man. Redeemed, completely redeemed. Oh man, remember all those actions in season 1? Oh, he's so redeemed, guys. Oh man. Oh, I can't wait to see what he does now that he's back on the team. Woo!